everybody, Grego's here, back again. I'll show you, can't remember quite where I've left off, but I'll show you what part two of the bodywork is, as in I've done the first layer and I've given it a sand, basically with two methods. I'm going to show you the first method when we go back to the first stage of bodywork on the other side. So basically I run an 8 inch direct drive sander. It is a DA, but it's a lot more aggressive, I guess. So more spinning than vibrating. So what you do is you use, even though it's round, you use that as an initial block just to knock the tops off the filler. And then once you've got the worst of it, then you switch to a block. Yeah, so I'm still using the Dura blocks at this stage. So and it's all about blocking the filler. Yeah, so but I'll even get that sander out and just give a light going over these, just to take the tops off. So the idea is not to get too aggressive with the 8 inch. So where is that thing? So I've got well, we just call it the 8 inch bog buster. And it's got a 40 grit on there. So that's mega tough. So basically once you're running it, I'll explain this now because I'm going to show you also, but it's quite noisy. I can't talk while you're using it. So you basically use it as you would a block. So like so. So you don't want to be leaning in on an angle like that. You just want to be skimming over the top. Let the sandpaper do all the work. You just hold the machine, and then that's just going to take the tops off. And then we go back onto the blocks with 80 grit. So you always try and use a bigger block as possible, as in a longer block as possible. You end up with more accuracy. You get down here, obviously the block is too long, so then you switch to shorter one with a bit more control there. So, and you want to be running the block wants to be running over as large area as possible. So this has already had its first go, and then we found the low points after the blocking. Because I was leaving it last night, I don't like leaving bare metal for too long, so I sprayed a bit of light etch primer just for the overnight protection, and that'll all be sanded off now. So yeah, so what we'll do is set it up over this side. So that's got its first rough-in block, first rough-in filler work rather. So let's see how this comes up after a bit of DA action. That's what I'm thinking. So you can see this guard as well. It looks quite rough the way I've laid that on. I can also talk about, see how we've got a little build up on the edges here. That's you know, from the edge of the filling blade. That's possibly from, hang on a second. So I've been using this filling blade, this metal blade. See how it's rounded on the corners? It can probably do with a bit more rounding. So it's a bit more tapered like that and not as square there. And you can do that just by rubbing the edge of the block, like so. You'll find that new filling blades, metal ones, are quite sharp on the corners, and like a chef bloody doing his knives, it's a good idea to see how that's rounded off more so than that one. that actually helps prevent these lines on here. But it all really doesn't matter. It's all going to be removed. So I don't stress over the fact that they're there. Give that a nice clean up so I've got a good blade to work with. But yeah, that's looking a bit better. Right, so how's that light? Yeah, that's pretty good. So I'll run the, give you an example now of using this bog buster. So when you're doing this rounded surface here like this, you basically don't want to be running lengthways like that. You save that for the block. So we're going to just hit that with the bog buster on like feathering over this way, back and forth that way. And then when we've removed the bulk of the top, then we get the blocks out and we run like that. But preferably not straight along the curve like that, because that's sort of creating divots. So your ollie is going to be running diagonally like so. Okay. Yeah, this front's built up quite a bit there, so a lot of this will be removed, you know. And that's the thing with filler. You might go, well, I've used a full can on the car, but it's irrelevant, because by the time you sand it down, you can see how much is on the floor from the other side. By the time you sand it down, you've removed more than what you've put on. So it's not like you've applied 4 gallons of bog to the car and that 4 gallons just stayed on there, you know. Why am I talking in gallons for? Now let's, you know, if only the Americans could catch up to the rest of the world and use the metric system. So, but funnily enough, when you buy stuff, sometimes it's basically measured out at an imperial gallon, and it's like 3.875 litres or something like that. So they've just catered to the American market with the amount of stuff you get. It's not always an even 4 litres. So anyway, that's neither here nor there. We are going to knock this back and you'll be able to see how far we go with it. So yeah, give you an idea of what's involved. So we've got our air on. Now with the air, we've got it set to about 90 psi, which is plenty for any air tool or whatever. The only time that you need maximum full bore air pressure is with a sandblaster, and most compressors can't keep up with a decent sized sandblaster anyway. So in reality, for in the shop for the sanders and all that, the 90 is plenty. So I've got a separate line going to like our air hose reel there for in here, so everything's always high pressure in here. And then there's a line high pressure going to the regulator in the spray booth in there on the wall, and then that gets taken down to about 50, maybe 60 psi maximum through that filter, and then you do your final adjustment on the gun, because basically you're not spraying over 30 psi max, you know. It's usually around in the 20s. So that provides plenty of air. But I think the regulator on the compressor isn't set too high as well. You got to make sure that that's around the 100 psi on the compressor, because if you have it set at 120 or 130, as soon as you start sanding or spraying, it'll automatically kick in, because it hasn't allowed to any loss at all, because you've got the pressure set so high. So there's nothing really you need that sort of PSI at, so your compressor doesn't work as hard by setting it at 90 PSI. So let's give this a crack and let's see what you think. I'm going to after much talking about health and safety. I know I can't talk as such. Yeah, what I might do is put you on time lapse. I'm going to clean the mask out. You don't want to put a dirty mask on, and we'll come back to it. Righto, so you can see there now. Hang on a minute, I'll try a bloody reach too many copyright bloody rules, bloody background music. Basically, you can see there where I've knocked the tops off the worst of it. You can see the darker patches where it's all still low, but using the DA like that instead of just going straight to the block, like to go straight to the block on this here is super hard work to crack through it, even though this 3M filler sands pretty well. Anything to speed up your job is a good thing. So using the bog buster just to knock the tops off first. You'll also notice like filler has a bit of little bit of a shine to it, and that's yeah, it's just like the outer when it dries, it has not a coating on it, but I mean filler can actually be quite waterproof if it hasn't been sanded. It's only once you sand it that it sort of cracks it open. So what would by using the 40 grit on the bog buster, it's gone really quick, and it's removed that top shiny layer back to the porous stuff mostly, except where it's low. So now with new sandpaper on the, we're going to put some fresh paper on the blocks. We've got 3 blocks that we're mainly going to use. This little one here that we use around the arch, the medium one which we use in those areas, like mostly along here and at the front, and then we use the longer block where we can get a good run at it. So I'm going to put some fresh sandpaper on all 3. That is one thing you will go through a lot of in this deal, in restoration, sanding. Actually, this 80 grit that's on there feels really fresh. You can tell, like that's quite smooth now because it's worn out. So again, yeah, value for money is everything for me. You know, I'd love to buy ultra premium stuff all the time, but sometimes you just can't. So this is 80 grit on a roll. The roll is 50 meters, so that lasts you a long time. The rolls are about $100 roughly. Don't quote me on that, but I'm not far off that. Could be a bit less, could be a bit more. So yeah, I use the Velcro Dura blocks. So, you know, according to the latest and greatest things, where they're using hard polycarbonate blocks or acrylic blocks, and stick-on paper, because this Velcro creates a bit of a soft barrier. Yeah, let's put it this way. This is what I'm using. You won't get an absolute, well, so they say, you won't get 100% perfect, true, accurate finish with this setup. But with the type of work I'm doing, I don't need to. Basically, that's what it comes down to. If I get someone in that wants a full show car, well, we're probably going to go down that path with the Carmen Ghia convertible there, Rosetta. We're going to make it our first show car, so I'll probably purchase a set of acrylic blocks, and it means you need then the whole specific type of sandpaper to go with those as well. So the idea is to just line it up, get it to, you know, just past the block, and then just give it a cut eventually, especially with the rougher grits, you go through a pair of scissors. You know, luckily they're cheap. You buy bulk packs of scissors because you will wear them out after a couple of months. So yeah, we'll put a little bit on this little one as well. It's handy little block. This block is quite firm. They're all quite firm, but they have got a tiny bit of flex in them. All right, so you can see that I can just bend that. Like overall, it's pretty flat, but it's that little bit of bend in it that you know, it does conform to the panel pretty well, but you might not get it like full-blown show standard as far as beyond nicely flat. You know, it's like absolutely perfect. So, but you wait and see how pretty this car comes out. So, I shouldn't need my mask for. Well, I'll put it on when I'm doing the bulk of the sanding off camera. I'll put my mask back on. But just while I'm explaining things to you, so yeah. So basically you want to have a hand at each end of it and actually run it on the diagonal. Now, panel work's all about lines, you know, lines that have been pressed into the metal, and that's what you want to work between, those lines, alright, and that's crucial. And some people like to, once you get up to the finishing stages, they run a bit of tape along the line. You know, when they get into the primer stages, and then they block up to that tape, pull the tape off, do it the opposite way, and yeah, try and keep the lines nice and crisp. So the line for this metal should come along here. There's still definitely some low points there, but yeah, so basically you want to be doing your blocking in a cross method. Alright, so X marks the spot. Now you're probably wondering, well, how do you know when to stop the blocking? And basically you've got to use your eyes, what you're seeing as the guide. So basically we know that this is the metal is where you're basically going to finish. You're not going to keep rubbing through that until you're getting right down to bare metal. That's still got epoxy on it there. Oh, and by the way, like if you get a tiny bit of a rub through, like there's a tiny bit of bare metal there, if you re-sand it, refill that and then block it again, you'll generally go down to that point again. That's where you got to stop. And then it's all going to get epoxied anyway, so you don't have to worry about it. Look, a lot of people will still do this whole process. It's actually quicker to do it that way, but I don't believe it's as good. Where this will all be in bare metal and they'll won't epoxy it and they'll just fill straight over it. Okay, so heaps of people do it that way and always have and always will. So you don't need to panic if there's a tiny bit of bare metal on there. So. But I know that underneath this filler, it's all got epoxy there. So. Alright, so basically you see that line appearing, wage line in the panel. You want to run the block over the end so you can see where the edge of the panel is there. So now it's just the middle section of the panel. Like, you can see how much fill is being removed, and that's the whole thing. It's just like, yeah, and it's just common practice now to do it this method, where you're skimming the whole panel and then blocking it. And it just eliminates transition points, and basically the metal work is pretty good on this car, but it's not perfect. but we've got the opportunities to make it look perfect with a couple of millimeters of filler. Makes all the difference. Like, that's just, it gives you the opportunity to do a supremo job. If you're one of those weirdos that says, look, I don't want any bog on my car, yeah, you just got to be realistic. So with what needs to be achieved in order to have no filler, including polyester primer, which is a spray filler, it's still filler. So yeah, so you've only got to, if you're not sure of the process, you know, take it from someone like probably the best Australian car builder there is, like Howard Astle, and have a look at how he does it. He's got a Road to Summernat's Top 60 video series on an XA Falcon, I think, XA street machine, you know, worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. And yeah, if you don't look up Astle Design on YouTube and follow the whole series, have a look at how much goes into it, and he gets his metalwork pretty good, you know, but he still does a layer of filler on the whole car, and it all gets blocked back multiple times, you know. So most of the filler gets removed, then he puts on high build primer, and then that gets blocked back, and it just keeps going. The more times you fill, prime, block and repeat, the more times you do that, the more perfect it's going to be. And then, but guess what, all of that takes time. So on jobs where they just want a nice driver and they're not particularly worried, especially on the combis, I'll only do the stage once. Basically fill it, sand it, like block it, epoxy it, put a few coats of primer on it, block that back, and then it gets painted. So we skip the polyester stage, which gives you more build, more chance to get it flatter, but not, you can still have a nice looking car without that. So okay, so that's pretty much, we've just got areas here and here where we're hitting the metal, so we know we're at the right temp there. We'll look at this in a second. So we'll look at this first part, and then I'll whack you back in time, mate. And I'll explain, please explain, where we're going to be, where we need to be for number 2. See how that filler area has come like right over the swage line? I'll just block that out just so you can see what's that needs to be straight. It's going back to the fiberglass filler that was in those repair sections, and going back to the epoxy. Right, so what we've got now is I can tell that there's still a low point here. And like this needs to be filled from this part right through to there, and under here needs more filler in there. I got some more blocking to do back in here first. Little low point in there. Like, we don't need to skim this whole thing again. It's only just looking for the low points then, and that's when you do your second skim. This is like very, very thin. It's not even a mil thick. So yeah, you just got to look for the points that are a different color, like it's basically unsanded in there, so you know it's low. Oh, and that's another thing too that I like doing If you've got an area like this in here, a low point that doesn't need, will need to be filled, I like to get a bit of 80 grit just on the edge of the block or whatever, and just give it a bit of a circular motion inside those points, just so that the bog will stick. Because if this is smooth, shiny bog that hasn't been scratched at all, you might lead to adhesion issues. So you're better off to give it a scratch first. It's the same thing if you use a guide coat. I might show you that on another panel. That's another good way of finding low points. I'm sort of used to this now where you know what to look for without the guide coat. But the point is that it would be, if you're not sure what you're doing, then the guide coat's good. So how about I demonstrate the guide coat a bit? That's probably a good idea. Righto, I think we're still rolling. I'm just going to, I've got to find my guide coat now. Should have got that out earlier. I'm coming. Right, so as part of the blocking process, you know, this is just a cheaper brand, but there's a few different brands. So another thing you can do is, it's got like a graphite powder in it. Oh, that's a bit much. And then you rub that on the panel like so. Now let's give this top a block just so you can see. Now the advantage of using this, everything's a bit more visual. Sorry, there's a bit of bloody dust on the camera. Is that better? Hopefully that's better. The advantage of this is the low points are much easier to find. So that's what I was saying about this line along the top, the edge of the guard. You really want to come sand back to that line. But not necessarily like just keep working away over the top of it. Sort of sand up to it. So the thing is with the guide coat, it's a good thing to use, because the guide coat will also show you where the scratches are, not just the low points, but the scratches from the 40 grit, from the bog buster. You can see there's circular scratches in here. So you keep blocking away at it until all those scratches are gone. Realistically, probably should be using the longer block even. With the longer block you get more accuracy over a bigger panel. Like if you were to block the whole panel back like this, with a small block like that, well then you end up with divots in the panel because you're sort of riding into the low points because it's not long enough to differentiate. So the longer the block the better. I'm right back here with this. I hope you can see all this okay. I hope you can hear me okay as well. I'm a fair away from the camera now, but I'm trying to speak clearly as possible. Alright, we've got a definitive low point in here. Putting a slight dent in the top of the guard. We'll definitely need to add some more filler in there. Yeah, to be honest, I pretty much recommend you, unless you've been doing it a long time like myself, yeah, it's definitely worth using a guide coat for every stage. So not just the filler stage here, so that when you sanded it all off, you got your points there, lower points, then you're refilling those lower points and then re-blocking it again. Then I'd put guide coat over the whole panel again once you got it to that stage, and then go to a 120 grit on your blocks, and then block all the guide coat off again until, so you should have it then that you've only got the epoxy showing, or the bare metal. You don't take it any further than that, and the filler should be all smooth right across it. So like I said, I'm not worried about little high point. It's not really a high point, you can't feel it, but that's as far as you want to take it with the block. It's all getting re-epoxied. All of it takes more time, but I much prefer to put a thin coat of epoxy over the filler before going to the next stage of primer. Just the epoxy makes it, yeah, it just seals it really well, So yeah, so it depends what you're working on. Oh, and by the way, righto, I'm just going to blow this off again. It's just much easier to see. Right, so it's pretty good now. I'll just get you close. But you can see these sanding scratches here from the bog buster. They're 40 grit scratches, so you want to definitely be removing them. But here is our main culprit here, a low point. And a tiny bit there. Yeah, there's a little ridge line there where the filler wasn't swiped off as smooth as it could be. So I'm just going to put a run of filler down here and some over here. So another thing too, it's got guide coat in that lower point there. Well, I know where it is, so I like to actually, again, like where I'm going to fill, just give it a bit of roughage, and that sort of removes the guide coat as well, just so there's no powdery residue in there. So you're virtually scratching all that out with that motion there. And along here I'm just gonna, and often if you do a circular motion like this on your low points, you'll actually see that, like in here, you'll see the circular scratches, and you'll be reminded of where you've got to refill. So righto, I'm going to block the rest of this down underneath. I'll do that on the time lapse, and then I'll come back and I'll swipe some filler in the low points. Oh, here we go. Here's our bloody copyright business again. I'll turn that down. Right, so it's a real shame that everyone can't get along. When I'm playing their music, I'm promoting their music, really. If my YouTubers are listening to it as well, then isn't that a good thing? Then people will search for you on Spotify. Just saying, Spotify. I think there's other things other than Spotify, but anyway. Yeah, right, so I'm going to hit some of these lows now. Rotisserie is great for this sort of thing. Like, you don't have to put on some. Yeah, I need to come over the top a bit, the guard. So sometimes it's a bit, until you get your levels sort of stabilized so that you know where the norm is. This This had had a hell of a hard time in the past, fully crunched in, and although we repaired the worst of it, you know, it's still not perfect. So this will bring it up to speed. But what I'm saying is, often you've just got to find, through trial and error, a bit of like, where's the normal, where should the panel be sitting. If it was a brand new panel with 0 filler in it, where would it be? Where would it be sitting? And when a car's had a hit, it's very difficult to find, especially with this many curves. Definitely Carman gears are a challenge. Combis aren't so bad. We know all the shapes and lines on a combi, so because we've done so many of them, but when you've got something different like this, yeah, and on these extreme curves, that's where the plastic fillers, the filling blades are in their forte, so that's where they work best. Yeah, so I'm hoping to do that Malamotives spline course in February next year. I can find a bit of money for that. That'd be good. You wouldn't be using too many splines on the front of this, but on these big areas, big sweeping areas, that's where they come into their own. So yeah, so I hope you can still hear me over here. Filler's starting to go off, so you got to bloody work fast. Of course, it's hot as anything today, but let's hope we can get a bit of this in. Like when there's so many low points in the whole area, you end up almost putting it over the whole panel again, almost. That's starting to go off now. You can see that bit of where it's pulling. Doesn't matter when it's, you know, when we're going to sand it all back and everything. So, yeah, so that is about it. Another handy hint is I like to have 2 chopping boards. I've lost my other one. It's around somewhere, but I'm not going to waste time bloody looking for it now. Having 2 is handy, so you've done your mix on one and you've wiped the board off like I've done there. Go and sit it outside in the sun, then use your other one and start mixing on that and spread, and then you swap them over. You keep alternating them like that. Just gives it a bit more chance for the filler on the top to tack off, because I can feel that now that that's still a little bit tacky. I ran the sander over this morning to remove a bit of a build-up that was on there, but you've still got a bit of tackiness on there, and that actually affects the next lot of filler you put on there. It actually makes it dry even quicker, so it's an advantage to have a clean, dry board, so as much as possible. Right, that's definitely, you don't really want to be wiping over a panel when your blade's like that and it's taken off. So we'll go back over here. I know you've already seen this, but I'll show you again. Look at all this dust on the floor everywhere. And that's virtually kilos of the bog being removed. No word of a lie. Oh. Let's talk about protection. I don't know, you know how they say like chefs have got bloody asbestos hands and stuff like that, they can handle a flame directly on them because of what they do. Oh, look what I did, I just cut myself. Good on you, Greg. My skin's pretty much impervious to, it's not impervious, but I don't have any ill effect. I don't deliberately go washing my hands in thinners and stuff like that, but you know, I can get bog on my skin without it bloody being a big drama. But I know some people, they do have an issue with it and they can get a reaction to it, basically. So if you feel that that's you, then just wear the disposable latex gloves. But that's another advantage of using the stick to pull it out there. You just get less on you. Yeah, because when you're dipping your blade directly into the can, yeah, it can have that effect. Right, so I got a bit of a chilled mix this morning. It's someone else's mix on Spotify, but yeah, it's not a bad one. I think it's actually just called Happy Mix. Fancy that. I like a bit of don't get me wrong, I love a bit of angry music. Love a bit of death metal. Love a bit of hard rock, a bit of techno, a bit of trance. But you know, I don't mind a bit of easy listening bloody folk music. It's only the country music that's I haven't got a grasp on yet. It's all those big hats that they wear. So but each to their own. I'm not going to judge you. We can still be friends, even if you don't like my satanic metal. Yeah, so here we go again. With a fresh application. And that's it. Also the trick too, you got to eventually get down to this arch. You're virtually, yeah, just using the small block. Or even when you get towards the finishing coat, you're actually just using a bit in your hand just to get that nice curve in there. So, right, I'll quickly pull the pin on this. Quickly go through here. Are we still rolling? I hope so. Alright, see how handy that is. Now I've got good access to the top here. So there was this big dinky part in the top. And we had a little bit across here, didn't we? Probably can't see that now. Sorry about that. Once you mix this bog, you want to have no distractions and be whacking it straight on. Like really, it's just, you're not going to have time to around. So if you want some more like full-on professional bodywork advice, whatever, I suggest Sylvester Customs at Travis Sylvester. You know, I'm umming and ahhing all the time. I'm not real good at this. But yeah, he's super clear and super informative. So yeah, if you want to learn how to do this better than what I can explain, get onto Sylvester Customs and look at his series of videos. He's also got metalworking videos where he takes, you know, completely dinted up, smashed up panels and then works them with, you know, shrink and discs and bloody hammer and dolly work and all that. He explains all that really well. So definitely a channel worth subscribing to if you want to learn stuff. So I actually got onto him by, I was looking at different buffing videos out there. I haven't done a buffing video yet really. And I don't know whether I'll do a buffing video because his is the best one out there by far. He just explains the difference in the process between what you would do on a daily driver, and then what you would do on a nice weekend car, and then what you would do on a full-blown show car, and explains the differences. And again, it's all just time. but it's also the blocks used, etc. So, and it's funny, you get on the forums and the different spray painter ones, and they're like, oh, you know, no, we get perfect finish every time, and we just sand with the DA 1500 and then 3000, and that's it. And then the reality is, no, you've got a nice shiny finish, but it ain't perfect. You want perfection, you got to go well beyond that. So some guys, most of them probably starting around the 800 mark. Some even go as far back as 600. That's on your finish coat, your clear, to get it dead flat. It's like 600 with a mega hard block. And then you think, well, how do you bring that back to a shine? Well, it's all about the process. You got to go from 600 to 800 to 1000 to 1500 to 2000, 3000, 5000. So much time and effort. You can spend easily full week, maybe 60 hours. 60 hours just buffing a car. But that's what it takes when you've got a high-end show car. There's really nice street machines and nice drivers and weekend cars, but they're not true show cars. So yeah, so I've seen some funny things, but Sylvester Customs is Sylvester Customs. Did I say that right? Yeah, I think it is. He's got the best explanation on it. So he speaks way clearer than me, and yeah, you know, I know he uses certain brands and whatever, but he's also not a brand snob. You know, like in his blocks, he's still got a couple of, you know, Durablocks that he uses, but he's got the hard blocks that it's basically a rigid bit of aluminium for the big flat parts, and the polycarbonate blocks. And anyway, he'll explain all that. He'll explain it much better than I will. But yeah, so now that's phase 2 on that one, and this one is still in. Whoa! This one is still in phase 1. So I'm going to put you back on time lapse, and you can watch me cut this back. Okay. Yeah, Grego's here live. I'm just getting the last of this video wrapped up. I'm going to throw this on. Long story short, edited a mega long video about filler work, which you've already sat through. If you've sat through this far, good on you. Mega. So another part that I didn't mention, that was sorry, I'm just bloody don't have me stand on me. Right, so it's clicked in. Another part I forgot to mention is that you want to attach your panels where you can, bolt them up. Oh, it's very bright out there. I'm trying to stop this flickering, of course, so I'll just point it this way. So you want to bolt the panels up and get them aligned so that the doors shut nicely, which I've done. These Fiat has, I'll just click it open, hang on. So it has the like cast iron hinges there, very sturdy, and it has points of adjustment on the door as well as in there. So so they'll all be sandblasted and painted, etc. But for now it doesn't matter. It's all about getting everything aligned so that we can block it all back. Yeah, so, and it's a good idea. I just got to punch in the sheet metal a little bit. Once you've got the door lined up perfectly, I've taken photos of where that sits in there. See how it's on a bit of an angle there? It takes a fair bit of time to line up the doors so that they shut nicely. So you need the catches on, you need the latches on. These are all a bit, plastic coating's gone a bit on it and whatever, but the fact is that it will still close like it's going to. Now most latches have 2 clicks. So what I do is, we don't have the rubbers, we are getting them, which we will have on there for the final block down. But you pull it to the second click so that the door's technically all the way in, then pull it out so that, and that's where we're running our line, because once it's got the rubber in place, it'll put pressure on the door to push it out. So that should be where it sits. So then what I do is, so this has all been filled as you've seen in the video and epoxied, and it's dried for a few days, and then I've gone over and blocked this again just with some 120, and then I've noticed the discrepancies here and there on it where there was a bit of a dip in the middle there and a little bit of in there, and on the guard here was a high point. You can see where I've run that block along there, and that's taken that high point out. Bonnet was good, pardon me. So then we basically run filler over the hinge area, and then we block it across the panel so that you've got that bodywork done, and it's basically going to be seamless right across. It's going to be nice and flat. See how that block's not hitting anything where it shouldn't be. So it's just lined up. These lines are just like beautiful and crisp. So that's quite a few hours of work just doing that, and you actually run the filler down. It actually fills up that crack there, but then you just cut through that and open it up again. But what you've got with that is it's just dead flat across there, and you can see, you'll be able to see here, you don't have any on the edge of the door. You don't want any build up on there. If you're going to have to build up 1 millimeter or 2, you want it on the body side there. So and that's, I think you can see metal up to this point. So I think about 1 or 2 millimeters was added there because the gap was not consistent, but now it's looking sweet. So yeah, it's super important to do that. We've got a beautiful even gap there and down here as well. Had to build up a little bit on there, like a millimeter or 2. So that's the difference. That makes all the difference. So oh, I won't point you that way. So the moral of the story is, get that done, what you've filled to as good as you think you can get it, before putting the high fill coats on, which I'm about to do now. I've got this all sorted, so I'm going to put on 3 or 4 coats of Resto Finish high build primer, and then the blocking process can begin again. I'm not going to do that final blocking until I've got all the, see, this is, the panel is bolted up, but it doesn't have its rubber to sit on, so it's very hard to get your final adjustment as far as blocking across the panel. When once the rubber's in, it'll sit where it needs to sit. So, and we've just got to sort out the bonnet hinges. This bonnet folds up like that, so it's hinged at the front, so it's a bit of a little bit different. So yeah, I just thought I'd show you these areas here, the transition between quarter and door, and how it's basically like one long panel now with no interruptions. So that is the aim's not a show car, but this is the process that they do in show cars. The main difference is they spend a lot more time, you know, even getting it better again. So, you know, if my door gap here, which looks very consistent, if it's a millimetre tighter here than on the other side, I'm not going to worry about that. The door opens and shuts easily. That's the main thing. And it's going to look straight down there, beautiful. Okay, so this isn't very thick at all, but by adding that millimetre or 2 millimetres, it's just going to make the job so much better. Alrighty, that should be the end of the video. I'll talk to you later.